Good morning. I just came across in my feed here, City of Minneapolis and the Minneapolis Federal Reserve have worked together to create this dashboard to monitor the City of Minneapolis's zoning changes. The City of Minneapolis created what they call the 2040 plan, and that's the year 2040. So the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul region is kind of unique. Well, it's not that unique, but they're under a regional growth system. So the governor of the state appoints a person to direct the Metropolitan Council, and the Metropolitan Council is an unelected board or governance that controls different aspects in the Twin Cities region. So the idea behind it is to try to grow the region as a whole rather than individual cities. So the city of Minneapolis, city of St. Paul, and then all the suburbs are individual cities. They all comprise the region. It's like 13 counties. And the idea behind this is they're going to kind of control the urban sprawl or suburbia, where that keeps chewing up farmland, and the city keeps getting larger and larger, and then put more burden on infrastructure, water, and sewer. So they do this thing called smart growth. They're going to try to control and restrain on how the city grows. If you're going to develop land here and provide more housing in the Twin Cities, you're going to have to find land that is in with Metropolitan Council's MUSA line, and that's the water and sewer utilities that you can connect to. You can't just buy farmland and put your own community septic system in there. You can buy some farmland and do 2.5 acre, 5 acre lots and put in private septic. But the cities, each of those cities that allow that, have to get their plan approved by the Met Council on how much housing they're going to provide and what kind of housing they're going to provide. So there's a lot of nudge tactics that go there. So the idea behind it is to control the growth, and then they also say they want affordable housing by choking off land, and they want to limit urban sprawl by choking off land to be developed. But what happens is it drives the price of land up sky high. So then the only option is to go upwards with like apartment buildings, condos, and higher density, or the buyers who want single family houses jump outside of that metropolitan area and they go to the next like farm community, and then they tap off that water and sewer system, and then that area grows. So now you've got all these little regions growing outside of the region. So the urban sprawl is actually much worse. And I think probably in the next 20 years, they'll kind of come to that conclusion, even though we've known it for 20 years, that's what the impact was going to be. But that's what's going on here in the Twin Cities. So the city of Minneapolis has affordable housing issues. So they're the first city in the nation that's going to tackle this by allowing up to 3 units. I thought it was 4 units, but this says 3 units on each single family lot. Okay, so they put this plan out, this zoning. I think it happened in 2020. So I'll share this dashboard that the Minneapolis Federal Reserve has created, and I'll share a screen here with you. Share a window. Okay, and I'm gonna jump back to here. Okay. So Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. New Fed tool measures zoning reforms impacts on housing affordability in Minneapolis. And then this is the 2040 plan, which I talked about. That's the plan that the cities have to submit to the Metropolitan Council to get approval on how the region grows as a whole. And Minneapolis became the first major city in the U.S. to eliminate zoning regulations that ban the construction of duplexes and triplexes. And that's what this article says, but I thought it was up to 4 units. I did not double check that. I just opened up this article this morning. So a lot of this is new to me. As the cities across the country contemplate similar zoning and policy changes, everyone's struggling with affordable housing in this country because we weren't building any housing. The Minneapolis Fed, in partnership with the city, has therefore developed a dashboard of indicators that measure the housing impacts of the Minneapolis 2040 plan. Okay, so this is their dashboard. Minneapolis housing indicators. So more housing, more affordable housing, more equitable housing. So they got all the buzzwords that you need in there. New duplex, triplex, quads. Okay, so now this is saying it is up to 4 units, and I believe that to be true. So the blue is in pre-2020 single family zoning. I think that's reversed. I think this says that these units, the 8 new permitted units, came out in 2020 when they changed the zoning, and then in 2021 another 8 came out, and then another 4 in 2022, and I think these green were in the pipeline. So I think these are labeled incorrectly. This is a new tool, or I'm reading it wrong. So new multifamily housing. Is defined total number of new units in multifamily housing, a structure of at least 5 units, so that's commercial, anything over 5 units, that receive building permits from the city. Okay, well, here's a clue. City of Minneapolis has their own building permits, which every city does, but what's unique about City of Minneapolis is they have specific electrical and HVAC and plumbing contractor licenses. So there's a lot of those trades that do not want to work in the city of Minneapolis and St. Paul as well. So I find a lot of my subs won't go into the city and work. And I had some rental properties there. I had a 2-unit building, and I had a water line issue coming out of the main, and it was a busy street. Then I also had an old clay, it was built in the 20s, the old clay sewer pipeline that went out there. Okay, well, the roots grew in the clay pipeline. Okay, fair enough. So I had that dug out and relined it, not a big deal. And then at the same time, that water, the old galvanized water that went out there, that had to be replaced. So normally in any city, you're responsible from the curb stop, which means that water shut off. It's usually by your sidewalk or near the street. The city comes in, shuts your water off there. You're responsible from that curb stop up to your water meter in the house. That's usually the way the cities work. So mine went out, but the leak was on the city side of that curb stop. Well, Minneapolis changed because they have their old infrastructure that's kind of decaying now, that they changed that overnight, and the resident is responsible all the way to the main. So my leak was between the curb stop and the city main, which normally the city's responsible for. So I had to pay for that new water line going to the water main, and the water main was on the other side of the busy road. So I had to get permits to block off this busy road, excavate that road to get a new water line in, which should have been the city's responsibility. So that one cost me like $15,000. And then when I went to get the contractor, I had, friends in the business that can do that. And no, I'm limited to just 7 contractors that can do the work in the city. Okay, so there's one of the reasons the city has affordability issues. But okay, I went off on a tangent there. So back to this chart. New permitted units in multifamily housing. And then Minneapolis, and the comparison without the Minneapolis 2040 plan. The difference after 2020 is currently not statistically significant. Okay, so it looks like this is the spread. Not that big a difference, but this is only a few years out. Say this is only 22 data, and then this is by neighborhood. Okay, so you can dig in pretty deep on this. I'm not going to get lost in the weeds on this because this is my first time through this. Housing composition. Okay. The difference between 2020 is currently not statistically significant. The total number of units across the following categories: single family, detached, single family, attached, duplexes, triplexes, quads, units in buildings with 5 to 19 units, and units in buildings with at least 20 units. The index ranges from 1 to 4, where 1 indicates all units are of only one type. Okay. I'm going to have to dig in this more to understand this better. But basically, what we are seeing here is there's no impact yet. But I will give them, the city, a little bit of grace here. 2020, I don't know if you heard of this little thing called the George Floyd incident. The whole city erupted in riots after that. Buildings were burned down. Then there's a big movement to defund the police. Since this has passed, the city of Minneapolis has been in absolute chaos. It's not. There's a lot of carjackings, a lot of car thefts, a lot of shootings, blah blah blah. But there's still, there's still nice neighborhoods there. There's still nice housing, so it's isolated. But all the news we get is, it sounds like it's absolute chaos. My opinion, it is chaos, but that's, I've lived there. I don't own any properties there anymore. The city has a long way to go to kind of fix their problems, and they seem to be going the wrong direction, in my opinion. But I do find this dashboard interesting. I do want to track it because I am all for freedom of choice. If you own the property, you should be able to utilize it for what you want within reason, right? You just don't put a nuclear landfill on a single family lot, right? There has to be some sort of permitting, some sort of zoning. But if you have no zoning laws, people are going to go where it makes sense. Commercial property is going to go towards the busy corners. I believe a lot of Texas operates that in Florida, right? So if you're going to invest money, you're not going to stick your gas station in a little neighborhood. You're going to put it on a busy intersection where you're going to get the most traffic. So you don't really need the government to zone you specifically on that. I do understand the concern on property values. And what happens when you give the cities too much power on zoning is it becomes a little bit too much control. We were in a suburb here, and the mayor came in to speak to a group, and they were talking about this corner on the, busy corner, and there's a vacant building there. This bar had shut down or whatever. And the mayor's talking how, wonderful plans she has, and she's gonna create this brew pub there. And I was like, well, does the city own it? No. Oh, so you're just going to force the owner of the building to do what you want to do. It's there tends to be a little much too much control on zoning, so there is a kind of a pushback to say, let's allow people to add more units. Let's add mother-in-law suites. If you want to do multi-generational family housing, you have the ability to do that, where the current zoning situations block that. So I think this is a good move in the right direction. So I do want to monitor this. My phone's blowing up here, excuse me. I do want to monitor to see where this goes, because I think this will have a good impact. The problem is this city is kind of in a rough spot right now to really gauge any results on it, because there's so much other stuff going on at the same time. It's not a good control experiment here. So that's all I got. I just thought this was kind of interesting, so I thought I'd share it with you. And hope you have a good afternoon, and I'll talk to you later. Take care.